Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. My guests today are two authors, Dr. Evodia Setati and Thato Motlhalamme. Evodia, a South African, is a chief researcher at the South African Grape and Wine Research Institute at the University of Stellenbosch. Thato, originally from Botswana, is a Postdoc Fellow also at the Institute and recently completed her PhD. In this episode, we learn more about the book that they have co-authored. The book title is Holding the Knife's Edge, Essays of Black Female Scientists in South Africa. This project came about after they noticed that there was a short list of female black scientists in South Africa to be role models for upcoming researchers. The book then tells stories of pioneering South African women in science who have climbed the professional ladders to the upper ranks of various organizations through innovation, academic excellence, social intelligence, authentic leadership, and tenacity. Their stories tell of deep knowledge, determination, and commitment to succeed, and a work ethic that ensured that success. Evodia and Thato call this project their labor of love that required sacrifices and investments of time and finance. This has since paid off as the book is with the editors and due to be released in August 2020, which is in time for Women's Month in South Africa. Stay tuned to find out more about this amazing project. Hi, ladies.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, Anne. Welcome to the show. So excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us on your program.
It's fantastic. So before we get into our interview, can you just both give me an introduction of yourselves? I think I will start with Evodia and then we'll get into Thato's intro afterwards.
So thanks, and thanks again. So as you said, my name is Evodia, surname Setati, and I am a microbiologist by training, and I currently work as a researcher at the South African Grape and Wine Research Institute. I come from Limpopo province. I grew up in a small, well, maybe I shouldn't say small, but in a township just outside Polokwane called Seshego. And I did my undergraduate training at what is now the Teflo campus of University of Limpopo. And then, of course, I did my master's and PhD in Stellenbosch. And I worked at University of the Free State and at University of KwaZulu-Natal at the Westville campus. And then I sort of found my way back to Stellenbosch in 2010 and have been here since.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for that introduction. Thato?
Well, and I am a postdoctoral fellow at Stellenbosch University at the South African Grape and Wine Research Institute. I just recently completed my PhD, so I am very new in my postdoctoral position, but my background is mainly in medical biosciences. I've got an undergrad degree in complementary medicine, and my master's is in medical biosciences. Before I did the shift before I changed to Stellenbosch University, the first two degrees I obtained at University of the Western Cape, and then I came to Stellenbosch University to do my PhD in wine biotechnology. I am originally from Botswana, grew up there. I think did my primary schooling in Botswana, but I've been in South Africa since high school. So it's been home for me for quite a while, although most of my family is still in Botswana.
Oh, lovely. I'm so glad that we get to know the two ladies behind the book. But now tell me, how did you come up with the title of the book? Would you care to explain?
Like I said, I am from Botswana and Evodia is a Pedi woman. And in both our languages, we have a common saying that loosely translates to the first half of our title, holding a woman a woman holds the sharp end of a knife. So we really wanted to unpack this saying from our languages, and it's really about the endurance and the perseverance of women in their personal and professional lives. You find that women are wives and mothers who have to build a legacy for their children, all at the same time having to fight through barriers in their professional lives to try and grow their careers. So it really was, we felt that the journeys of the women in the book were encompassed by this saying perfectly, by holding the knife edge.
Oh, that's very interesting. So it was like you said, it comes from both your languages, which is pretty interesting. And we're going to get more into the book, specifically what it's about. But, in both of your introductions, neither are the both of you authors by profession, So then take us through, how does this happen? How does this book concept come along? And how do the two of you decide, okay, this is something that we have to do. We have to write a book on Black female South African scientists.
So, and to be honest with you, this book came about in a roundabout way. And I always sort of put this blame on Thato, and I always tell her she's the instigator. And the way it came about is that, as I said, I'm a researcher in the Institute. And to be quite honest, I'm the only Black academic in the Institute. We do have one of my colleagues who's colored. So when I say Black, I mean Black African. And in most cases, the young Black students somehow gravitate towards me when they are in our institute, and they like to communicate with me, ask me questions, about life, about science, about my career. I think usually the curiosity is driven by how you make it in a university like Stellenbosch as a Black person. And Thato is one of those students who sort of liked to ask me questions. And this started in 2015. I registered for a master's in management coaching, and I needed to find people to coach as part of my training, as part of the practice. And Thato was one of the people who offered themselves to come for my service as a coach. And we sort of grew close to each other, and she would ask me questions about a career in academia. And one of the things that she liked to highlight was that there were no role models, especially for young Black female scientists. And I used to say to her, no, that's not possible, that there's enough role models out there. And the more she complained about this, the more I felt like, okay, maybe there's some validity to what she was saying. And so I said to her, you know what, perhaps we should explore this a little bit more, and we should do something about it, find a solution. And where we started was, first we sort of did a roundtable discussion where we called in a few young female PhD students, and we asked them questions to say, who do they see as their role models? And if they were to meet a person who is their role model, what kind of questions would they ask? What would they want to know? And so on. So after that, it became more apparent to me that perhaps there is really this need for young people to identify people to learn from, to take examples from. So I said to Thato that, okay, so why don't, we write a book? And if you do that and you put together the starting material, I will support you in that. And she compiled a list of possible people. And she drew this list, I think, from a variety of women who are scientists that have published their own books, scientists who are entrepreneurs, leading scientists in academia and so on. And so we went about reaching out to these women. Obviously, we are not close to them. We didn't know them. We knew them, but they didn't know us. And initially, it was a challenge because we had to email them and pray and hope that they don't think we are crazy, and pray and hope that they just don't delete the email because they can't recognize the name and so on. And we set up, interviews. Most of the interviews were really Skype interviews. And, we would ask them the questions formulated from our initial interaction with the other young PhD students. And just ask them stories about their lives, how they sort of built their career, what are the kind of challenges that they had, what their upbringing was, and, what could they say to younger people that would help them navigate science careers. And so that's where we started. And, the interviews meant that we had to transcribe the material, sit together and see if we read the story the same way, because obviously there's more than a decade between Thato and I in age. And so obviously the message I take from the story will not necessarily be the same kind of message that she's taking. And so we would sit together and sort of combine our stories to make sure that the story was coherent, and do the back and forth with the contributors to make sure that we don't misrepresent their stories. And now here we are with sort of almost at the end of the journey with this book, because it's now with the editor going through proofreading.
Wow, what a journey. And I suppose thank goodness to Thato for instigating this wonderful initiative. And you're right, there are very few role models in science, and it's great that you are putting together these women for up and coming scientists, or even just normal everyday women, to look up to them. But however, I'll just like to put a little bit of a spanner in the works, right? So this book, some might ask, why only South African Black women, because looking back at South Africa's history, Black men also had their fair share of challenges, also in the science field. So then why did you only choose the women? Why did you not include the men as a whole to in your book?
So I do agree with you that both men and women in South Africa went through many challenges throughout our history. However, I don't think that the challenges were experienced the same, and that the challenges continue to affect us in the same way. For instance, when a woman decides to start a family, that has a different impact on them than a man. In South Africa, we don't have same systems as European countries have, where a man can also take long paternity leave. And so the woman tends to be the only person whose career is affected. And when you go back into the working world, into science, you find that your peers are several steps ahead, and nobody is mindful of the fact that you had interruptions. And so having to catch up with your male counterparts is quite difficult on women. And also what I have experienced, having worked at different universities, is at the undergraduate level, for instance, you see a lot of young Black women in science classes. But if you look at the higher levels in jobs, in different jobs, be it a CEO of a company, a director, a professor at a university, then you see that there are less women. So suddenly when the ladder goes, the ranks of the ladder go higher and higher, somehow you have less women than what was represented at undergraduate level. And so I believe that men have enough role models, and also they have less challenges in terms of the impact that a work-life balance can have on their career. And that's why for us, we thought it's important to highlight these challenges and provide young women with positive examples. And this book can be read by everybody, men and women. A father can read this and understand the type of challenges that their daughter would encounter, and how to support them and how to help them, or their wife or their sister, and so on. So the book, although it's written about women, it's not for the readership of women. It's for everybody to read.
Oh, no, I understand your justification. And, what you said about the different challenges that men and women face. I'm not sure if you saw, there was that recent article that was put out by Nature, the journal, where they spoke about how, in terms of the productivity between men and women during this pandemic, it seems like less women are publishing more. I mean, less women are publishing, and more men are actually publishing during this pandemic. So I think when you look at it, some of these inequalities are actually still happening, and I think it's important that your book gets to address some of these things. But anyway, just to bring it back, you mentioned that you had Thato had created a list with all these amazing Black women scientists. So I just wanted to find out, who are some of the women who are being featured in the book, and also why them in particular?
Well, we've got quite a few women. We whittled down, obviously, the very long list that I initially had started off with. But both Evodia and I are biologists, and our research focus is in the biological sciences. But we don't only want to speak to people in this branch of science. We wanted to attract or get women from different spheres of the STEM arena. We wanted to get mathematicians, engineers, medical practitioners, chemists, physicists. We wanted to attract women from every sphere of science, so that we can motivate young people to model their careers in whichever direction of STEM they wanted to explore. So we've got a world-renowned chemist in Professor Tebello Nyokong, a mathematician with Professor Mamokgethi Pakeng. We've got a physicist who's also an excellent science communicator in Dr. Patience Mthunzi Kufa. We've got biologists in the medical field. We've got Professor Salome Maswime, and we've got a plant biotechnologist, Professor Nokwanda Makunga, who's also another excellent science communicator. But we wanted to get a broad picture of women who really break the mold of what people have in their minds as a typical image of a scientist who's just focused in the lab, wears a lab coat, and has very little going for them outside their research fields. We also have our entrepreneurs. Professor Keolebogile Motaung successfully translated her scientific research into a spin-off company where she produces medicinal. She has products derived from medicinal plants that she has commercialized. So we wanted to show young people that there's quite a we have diversity in what people consider as science. It's not just one single umbrella term, but we also wanted to show them that the quality of science research that's done in Africa and the quality of science, the caliber of scientists that are produced in Africa are in par with the rest of the world. So it's not like we are 10 steps behind everybody else. We are right on par with the rest of the world, and we should be very proud of that.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's a phenomenal list. And I think like Evodia mentioned, that if somebody had to read this, they would be very inspired. So you've been writing this book for the past 2 years. And like you mentioned earlier, that the book is now with the editor. So congratulations on that feat. So this shows the amount of time and dedication that you put into this project. I'm sure it's not been an easy road. So what are some of the challenges that you faced during this journey of putting this, passion project of yours, if I can call it, together?
And it's been a long journey, and I can say that we don't remember what a normal Saturday looks like, because all our Saturdays were dedicated to writing this book. It wasn't easy, because during the writing of this book, Thato was still busy with her PhD, writing her thesis. So she had to sort of balance the two projects, basically, and make sure that both of them were successful. And at the same time, obviously, for me as a full-time employee of the university, I still had to do my work. So that's why our Saturdays were dedicated to the book. And sometimes I had to travel. So there were times when we were working, sitting on different continents altogether. And we still had to commit the weekends to working on the book. We learned to work on just about every platform, and manipulate documents while somebody's sitting in Europe and somebody's sitting on the African continent. But I think the biggest challenges for us were, firstly, accessing these women wasn't that straightforward. As I said to you, we didn't know, we don't know them as personally. We know them from the work they do, from their publications, from their news and so on. And so just reaching out to them and having access to them was not that straightforward. Some of them, as Thato said, we started with a very long list. So we don't have all the people that we started with, because some of them would respond. And while you're thinking that, okay, we have this one in the bag, then you get an email a couple of weeks later that says, no, but you know what? On second thought, I'm writing my own book, and therefore I don't want to contribute to your book. Or you would have situations where you just don't get any response, and you would scratch your head and think, should I write and go, hello, did you get my email? Can you respond? Or you would have those that say, I'm interested, but then you can never actually get them to sit down for an interview, and you keep chasing after them until you actually just give up and move on. And so those were some of the challenges. And then, of course, we are working with this from our own pockets. So you have to dig quite deep into your pocket financially. So our book is illustrated. We had to find and identify the appropriate illustrator for our book, pay for the illustrations, and find the right publisher for our book, and trust that those people are giving us the correct advice. And so it's been quite a journey, and I think that's why it has taken so long, because starting from accessing people all the way to actually paying the cost for the book was at every level a challenge.
I can imagine, especially like you mentioned that you had to pay this out of your own pocket. It's not easy. So given some of these challenges that you mentioned, the ones that you faced, are you then looking for, external support from people? And, if given this platform that you have right now, would you be willing for outside help if somebody wants to to help you, how can they do that?
Oh, definitely. We're always looking for help. I mean, this has been part of our lives for 2 years, and it's been a fun process. It really has been a process where Evodia and I got to explore our creative sides. We got to explore our techie side, with, like she said, where we had to figure out platforms and figure out how we could work together on two different continents at times, and across all kinds of issues that we've had to overcome to get to this point. So it's been a fun process. It's been an awesome process. But for us to make this passion project of ours, as you call it, and this labor of love of ours to become a reality, we need a little bit of help, maybe a little bit more than a little bit of help, getting the funding together. We have a crowdfunding campaign going on on Thunder Fund, where we are asking people to really support with as little or as much as they can afford to try to help us get our book through the publication process. In addition to that, we want this book to be accessible to young people in all corners of the country. We do not want it to stay in the exclusive books of the country where it's only accessible by the few who can go to these bookstores and access the book. We want this book to be in school libraries and municipal libraries. So we call on business women, businessmen in communities to come on board and pledge to help us print X number of copies for their school library or their municipal library, to say, okay, fine, I live in this town or in this city, and to make sure that my school library has got the kids in my community and my school libraries have got access to this wonderful book. I will pledge to print 100 copies or 500 copies, even individuals in your own capacity. If you want to print 10 books, or whatever you can, or however much or however little you can contribute, would be really appreciated. But it's not only monetary assistance that we welcome and need. It's also if you have advice on how we can better market our book so that it really gains the amount of attention that we think it rightfully deserves. So if you've got marketing experience or just knowledge on you've published books that you know some of the stumbling blocks that we might face along the way, advice is really, really welcome in that sense. So we really appreciate any and all advice to get us through the finish line and make sure that our book really is the reality and an awesome product that we think it is.
Yeah, no, definitely. You're right. I think sometimes, as much as one can look for the monetary aspect, I think sometimes just being told, being told what to do and what not to do really goes a long way. It will save you a lot more cost maybe in the future. And you mentioned that you want this book to be easily accessible, which is really fantastic. Then this just brings me into my closing question. What advice would you give to somebody who's inspired by what you are both doing in terms of putting together a book like this, and also what legacy do you want your book to leave behind, mostly for Africans, but specifically women in STEM? I'll give you both the opportunity to answer that. And you can start, Evodia.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think I will keep my advice very short and sweet. So I grew up in apartheid South Africa, and the women in this book grew up in apartheid South Africa. Some of them, their parents were domestic workers, gardeners, bricklayers, and so on. and some of them were brought up by their grandparents, but they did not let their lack of resources, lack of access to study material, sort of be a stumbling block. They had a focus and determination, and they made that work. And I think it's important for us and for young people to, and I'm not saying that people should forget that we had apartheid in this country, but to really take ownership of our own future and try to not find reasons to bring ourselves down. Try to not hold on to the challenges that our parents have gone through, that our relatives have gone through. These women show that irrespective of the monetary challenges that your family might have, irrespective of the quality of schooling that you might get, if you are focused, if you are determined, you can persevere. And that for me is important because these women make it clear that it can be done. Along the way, they were told that they cannot do it, that they don't deserve the opportunities, that there's no way that they would be world-renowned scientists. But they went out there and they proved the world wrong. And I think it's important for young people to learn and to embrace that positivity and that message. And I believe that our book provides them with sufficient examples for them to identify a person who looks like them, who has the same background, the same story as they do, but they have made their life a success. This cannot go without sacrifice. Writing this book, as we said to you, we don't remember what a normal Saturday looks like. And this is because you have to sacrifice. Next time a person sees this book on the bookshelf, they need to understand that we had to tell our friends and our families, hang on, I'm working this Saturday and I'm working this Saturday. When a friend calls you and say drinks, you go, sorry, I have a project going on, I can't see you. And so I think it's important to have that kind of focus, have a goal, have a dream, and go for that dream without worrying yourself about what other people are saying and what the role of the naysayers could be, in your journey. You must accept that they will be there, but they shouldn't really determine your fate in life.
Okay. Thato?
In adding to that, I just want young people like myself and younger coming up through the sciences to stand tall and take pride in ourselves as African young African scientists. The women in this book really showcase that, like I said, the caliber of science, the research that we do on this continent, the scientists that we're producing are on par with the world. And we shouldn't always look to the West and more recently the East for innovation. We should actually be using the capital that Africa has right now, and that is our youth. The numbers we have and the youthful populations that we have to really look within to solve our own problems. Sometimes our lack of resources is fertile ground for innovation, and we could be solving, just by tapping into that, we could be solving global problems in an African way. So I really want us to stand up and take up, using Miss Universe's words, take up space to say, we are here, we can do this, and we are going to do this. Ignore, if as much as possible, the obstacles that you may face in the way, because those obstacles are not insurmountable. The women in this book show you that they are not insurmountable. For as long as you stay focused, like Evodia has said, for as long as you are passionate about what you're doing and you know why you're doing it, you can really overcome anything. But let's just stand tall, and let's be proud of what we do in our continent.
That's fantastic advice. And, we keep talking about this book, and, I think it would be improper of me to not ask, when potentially this book, I don't know if it's too soon yet, the book might be available for people to actually purchase a hard copy or maybe pre-order. Could you, either of you, elaborate on that quickly for us before we wrap it up?
As we said, the book is now with the editor, so we are really at the end of the journey. Our goal is to have this book out there during Women's Month, so August, and we are pretty much on target to achieve that. In terms of pre-ordering, yes, I think the Thunder Fund platform is actually the best route for pre-ordering, because a person can pledge, as little as 5,000 rands will have you 10 books that we will have signed, and they can go to your school of choice. You can have your own copy from the lot. So I think that's one route to go, to pre-order. But of course, in the coming month or so, we will start sending out messages via our Twitter account, just to start highlighting where we are in the process and how, sort of a countdown.
All right, fantastic. But with that being said, we look forward to it, and what an exciting time to have books like that available, and how fitting is it if it is for it to be ready in August, in Women's Month, to further celebrate all these amazing Black women scientists in South Africa. And I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you're doing, for all the hard work, all the sacrifices that you put in putting this book together. It sounds like a very exciting project, and I'm sure I don't speak only for myself, but other people who are listening to this are pretty eager to get their hands on it and to read some more. So thank you both.
Yeah, thanks. And thank you so much for giving us the platform and the opportunity to really share our story.
Oh, fantastic.
Indeed. Thank you, Anne.
It's been a pleasure. And to everybody else who's listening, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Until next time, bye.